Welcome, everyone, to the Apex Sunday podcast, where myself, Robert Ross, and John Dowsett talk about Formula One and MotoGP races and events and features. And today we're talking about the 2022 Spanish Grand Prix for Formula One. And John, lots of people kind of freaked out pretty early saying Mercedes is back. They definitely made a step. They've had an improvement this race, but they still have another step to go. I mean, Charles Leclerc and others were pointing out they're still about anywhere from a half second to 7/10 back still. So, it's interesting that a big step is still not big enough for Mercedes.
I don't know. I agree and I disagree. There's the big step. It was a huge step. They got rid of the porpoising. And if they've got rid of the porpoising, now they can make the next step to work on the other parts of the car to make it faster.
That's what I think. It's just going to take some time. Like they can't do it all in one race, right? So, yeah. I mean, people, I guess, are anxious for them to be back and to be more competition. And so am I. I mean, regardless of who it is, more competition at the front is good. But we'll see how that works out. So should we move on to qualifying?
Let's do it.
Let's do that. For qualifying, we just talked about Mercedes sort of making a step, and there was a big kind of controversy over the Aston Martin team doing sort of a tracing point and coming out with a car that looks a lot like the Red Bull. But apparently it's cleared the FIA's, copying checks and so forth. And it was a concept they already had in the preseason. They just brought it out. But it didn't help them in qualifying or the race that much, although there's something in the race, but not too well in qualifying, did they?
No.
And
so they had to punch a hole in the side of their car.
Yeah. Again, it's perhaps they see some promise and it'll just take some time to bring that car up to speed. But again, it'd be nice if they're a bit more competitive, right? We saw the Ferrari teams do very well in qualifying, including the Haas's. Mick Schumacher got into Q3 for the first time. Ricciardo out-qualified Lando, which is rare. And then we had Leclerc spinning in Q3, but his pole lap was quite spectacular, wasn't it?
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Pulled out all the stops. I kind of question what's going on with Danny.
As are a lot of people. Yeah.
Quick and quali, quick in practice.
Not in the race.
No. And, I was talking to Krista about it. And her theory is that he got ousted at Red Bull because they wanted Max.
Yep.
Was he faster than Max? Yeah.
He's close, right? Actually, yeah, I thought he was pretty close.
He was faster than Max. Anyway, doesn't matter. They were close. He was there first. He was the number one driver and instantly became the number two driver. And what has he done since?
Right. Yeah, I think it was driver 61, but I could be wrong about that. It might have been the race that people were saying. For example, Alonso still has all his fire and motivation, and perhaps Ricciardo is losing it at this point. And certain things like that can affect your mentality, can it? Like a new driver comes into the team and all the attention's to him, and you can lose your focus or whatever, or some of your.
And he never got it back.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
He's contracted for next season, and after that, he doesn't have a contract with McLaren. But people are talking about him being out after this season, so we'll see. And the other thing about qualifying is this is the first time we've had a consecutive pole sitter this season in Charles Leclerc.
Phenomenal, huh? Isn't that great?
It's good. Good mix up. Anything else in qualifying, or should we move on to the race?
Just the traffic. The traffic pisses me off.
Yeah, what do you think?
No, there's not much to say. I mean, it was nice. It was nice seeing Valtteri up in the top 10. It was nice seeing Lewis even though he's behind George, it was still nice seeing him up there.
Mhm.
It's good seeing the names making some headway. And in regards to Aston Martin, there always has to be a back marker. There always has to be somebody in the back. I just wish it wasn't the Canadian team.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the Canadian drivers in particular. Latifi
Right.
is not doing too well with the new Williams, is he?
No,
So, yeah.
no,
All right, so we'll move on to the race.
absolutely.
In the race, we saw some good starts from from Alonso and Schumacher, but then we saw that Magnussen clash with Hamilton, which put them both back, particularly Hamilton. And Magnussen blamed Hamilton at the time, but post race, he looked at the footage and said, "It's an incident. I probably should have left him just a little bit more space," because Hamilton apparently lost a little traction in the slipstream of the car ahead and slid out a touch, but not much, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was a racing incident as well. What did you think?
Oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, that happens. And you know what? Everything is so frantic at the start of a race. And
Yes.
what Magnussen did, yeah. Lot going on.
Yeah, we saw Sainz and Verstappen lose their rear ends and spin in this race. I mean, these cars are just, I love seeing them squirreling around a lot. It's a lot nicer to see them struggling with the cars rather than being on rails all the time.
It also seems like it's like the old ground effects cars that when they lose it, it's a snap. It's gone. You aren't gathering it up.
Right.
Which
I will
is
say
very
that
dangerous.
Yeah, on lap 10, Leclerc was over 8 seconds ahead. So he was really quite dominant. But, by lap 10, also Lando had already passed Ricciardo, who had outqualified him. So again, the Ricciardo story continues. And by lap 27, that's when Leclerc lost all of his power. And so we have this reliability, which is another factor in this season, this time affecting Ferrari. So he loses all those points. And we had the DRS flap with Verstappen.
Yes.
That led to some amusing radio messages. Max is definitely not a calm guy in the car compared to some of the other drivers, is he?
No. But what it did give us, it gave us the better part of 30 laps to watch an incredibly wide Mercedes and George Russell driving a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful race.
Yeah, good racing between Vettel, Alonso, and Verstappen and Russell.
Yes.
Very, very good racing there. The race seemed long to me. It almost seemed like a 3-parter, almost like episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, just because so many things were happening. And so like this DRS thing and so forth, you're just not used to that. And then the thing that a lot of people are talking about is the team orders from Red Bull. And you've mentioned this before. It's clear that Perez is there for Max. Russell, you believe, is there for Lewis, at least this year. Perez was pretty upset about that. I can understand him being upset, but it's been clear from day one that he's the number 2 driver.
I think that's just entirely political. He knows he's the number 2 driver and he wants to make a statement to other teams in case he gets to be the number 1 driver at another team.
Right.
What I literally laughed out loud at was them saying that maybe Ferrari might have to do the same thing and have a dedicated number 1 and number 2. And I thought, oh my God, they're the only people that have gotten away with having that out front for so long when people got upset about the 1-2 thing, right?
Yeah. Alonso and Massa, right? That was a big controversy.
Way
before that
back.
Schumacher.
It goes on forever.
Yeah.
And it used to be just accepted. I'd like to look back to see when that changed, because when I first came in, it was still very much a number one and a number two. And I started watching in the late 60s,
Yeah.
1960s. I guess I have to say 1960s now, right? Early 70s. And Francois Sever was a dedicated number two to Jackie Stewart. And yet Jackie Stewart will say he was faster than he was many times.
Didn't Sever also use that opportunity to learn from Stewart? He kind of looked at it as a way to speed up his development.
Then you're allowed to do it because I know I'm the number two and the number one is there to give me all that guidance.
Yeah.
And the number one is going to give you all that guidance because as a number two, you know he's going to stay behind you or he's going to support you. Whereas now everything kind of got wishy-washy. That was probably Senna Prost, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, they did quote ban team orders for a while. Then after the Massa Alonso thing, where Felipe Alonso is faster than you or Fernando's faster than you, they had to do it that way because the team orders were illegal at that time, which was absurd, right? And everyone saw how absurd it was. Like, we can't just order you by, we have to pretend, through this kind of coded words, although it was so obvious. So
you're overheating or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So after that, they kind of allowed it back in, I think, which I found bizarre, like officially. So it's sort of officially it was out and officially back in, but it's been there all along for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
There are examples of, like with the Pro Senna thing, that team was so dominant that it didn't matter if they took points away from each other. They had no other rivals, basically.
Right.
Whereas now, with this situation, you almost have to have a number one and two pretty early in the season. And I think that Perez has to realize, or perhaps he does, that if he was performing at Max's level every race, then he would earn that number one spot off of Max, possibly. Although, that's just speculation. It's just not happening. But Max has proven that he's the number one for that team so far, don't you think?
Absolutely. And if you look historically at Perez's performance, the man has brain fade. I mean, he's another David Coulthard, who just showed unbelievable brilliance and then absolute stupidity or brain fade. Jean Alesi is another one famous for that, right? Who just had unbelievable car control.
Yeah.
But could he hold it all together for an entire race? What is it? ADD? I don't know.
I remember he forgot to come in for fuel once, and
he refused to. He refused to.
Okay.
And he was going to win the race. He was in the lead, and he was going to win the race, and ran out of fuel at the last lap. I think it was, or two laps to go. Yeah.
So the only other thing I have to say about the race is it's very unusual to see that overheating issue that Mercedes had at the end, where Lewis had to slow down so much that Sainz passed him again. But you got to finish the race to score points.
Right.
Apparently, it was hotter than usual in Barcelona. So perhaps when they get to some other hot places, I don't know if that's going to be a reliability issue with them. But so we're seeing cars that are difficult to drive. We're seeing reliability issues. Some that destroy your race completely, like Leclerc. Some that affect a race, like the DRS with Max. So, some pretty interesting factors that up until like last season, we talked about how unbelievably reliable these cars are compared to the past, right? Because of the engine rules and so forth. You got to use the same engine for X amount of races and so forth.
Yes.
And that really increased the reliability. But now we're kind of, again, back to the old days a little bit, aren't we?
Yeah. And we lost Guan Yu, which I was thinking, since we lost, two Ferraris, I was sort of expecting to lose more Ferraris. I'm glad we didn't.
Yeah, it's same kind of area too, but I don't know if it's the exact same.
I really feel sorry for Chaz Leclerc. I mean, he was out front, drove a brilliant qualifying, and he came up, had a great start, and was running quali laps. Well, not quali laps, but he was driving 10.
He was the class of the field for sure.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah,
and it was driving. It wasn't just the car.
Yep. How would you rate this race?
That's a tough one.
Mhm.
I'd probably put it at an 8,
Right.
uh, only because it's so much wonderful passing. It was incredible to see Lewis Hamilton go from, what was it, 7th to last, and then right back up through the field again. Would
Yep.
have loved to have seen what he would have done if, if the Magnussen event didn't happen. And
Mhm.
lap after lap after lap after lap of Verstappen being held back by Russell. Fantastic.
Yeah. Just sort of out of reach of his defective DRS at that time, right?
Great,
So,
great racecraft.
yes. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So who would be your driver of the race?
I hate to say this, but it's Lewis.
It's the
Uh,
same for me.
just for him to keep it together, he definitely lost it. At the beginning, he was saying maybe we should just save the engine.
Mhm.
Um,
It's funny. I'm going to talk about that for a second. I guess he was convinced with the performance of the previous races that there's no way he's going to be able to get this car up, right?
right.
And afterwards, he thanked the team for making him continue and so forth. So
Hmm.
I don't think people jumped on Lewis for that. So, oh, he's a quitter. He gives up, and it's like no, he's just making an assessment at the time. It was the incorrect assessment, and his team helped him, and that's all there was to it, basically. But I
Right.
thought that Lewis showed again his racecraft because he passed Sainz on the outside, and he did it how you're supposed to pass people on the outside. Whereas, like he was sufficiently alongside that he had that corner. Whereas you see Red Bull complaining about Russell's moving in the braking zone and Russell pushing Max off at the turn 3 or 4, I think it is. But that's a momentum corner where you're pushed out towards the edge anyways. So
Max didn't belong there.
yeah, and Max said he would have done the same thing as Russell did in that situation, which is obvious because he's Max. So
Yeah.
I there's the racing this time was clean. I mean, Magnussen made a mistake, but again, it wasn't intentional. That was just something that happened. So yeah, but
Oh, it was a
Lewis,
minor mistake. Minor mistake. I
mhm.
don't. I don't even know if I call it a mistake.
Yeah, just that's why it's
Because
an incident, right? It's just a racing incident. It
how much
happens.
how much room do you give the other car? How much
Mhm.
room do you give the other car is the question at hand. And as you said, there's a little bit of dirty air that caused Hamilton to drift out. What? Maybe
Just a
another six
touch,
inches, 6 inches, maybe. Seriously,
maybe,
6 inches,
maybe even
maybe,
less than that. Yeah,
maybe even less than that. But that was enough because I'm used to driving this close to the other car, and
yeah.
because of the start, dirty track, God knows what it might be.
All right, we'll talk to you about Monaco next time.
Cheers.
Cheers. And if you like this content, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. And we'll see you soon. Bye bye.